Watch the ride.
Hey everybody, hope you're all doing alright out there. I'm back down at Hazelmere Motorcycles because today I'm taking out the new Suzuki GSX-8R. This obviously uses the same engine as the new 8S, the DE and the RE. The difference between the naked one and this is they've put a little bit of extra work into the suspension just to make it a little bit firmer. Now what I'm going to do today is get this bike down to my neck of the woods and have some fun in the country roads. But before we do that, BikeSure. Thank you to BikeSure for sponsoring this video. If you're looking to get one of these, your first 125 or maybe your fifth bike, if you've got a simple bike or something that's been customized and specialized, they will work to find the best cover for you. Thank you to BikeSure for sponsoring this video. Please check them out at the link in the description. So yes, a massive thanks to BikeSure. Now, I'll let you know into a little secret. This isn't the first time I've ridden this bike. I actually rode this bike yesterday. I reviewed this bike yesterday. However, what happened was my microphone cable snapped internally halfway through the day, which is annoying, but actually I'm kind of glad about it because by the time I'd done with it yesterday, I actually felt like I'd really got to know it a lot better. And I think that this will end up being a better review and more concise because of it. Okay, just while the engine's warming up, I'll point out the controls on this because there's not a lot to it. You have your start-stop button, which is the auto start, so you just press it once and it starts. Hazards, obviously you've got your front brake, clutch, pass light, mode button, up and down, horn, indicators. Very simple layout, nice clean dash. So then if we look at the dash, we press the mode button, we can go through the traction control levels from 3 down to off, nice and easy to turn off like that. And then you have power modes A, B and C. Revs around the side, speed in the middle, fuel down here, temperatures, gear indicator, and show your quick shifters active. What more do you need? So the first thing I'm going to talk about, because I actually, I've got to know it by now, is the ergonomics. I am 6'4", and this bike is very comfortable for me. It's quite upright. It's more upright than you might expect, actually. The seat's very high up and the bars are quite low down, but because of I don't know, the size or something, I'm just, you can see I'm quite upright, I'm comfortable. However, there was one thing that struck me yesterday more than anything, which is that this bike, honestly, feels, because of the low down weight, and I mean, the weight must be very low down because you can barely feel it, it's a very thin bike in the middle, and just very nimble. It actually has the sort of frame feel, as it were, of a smaller bike, maybe a 3 or 400, maybe a 500, something like that. But the engine in this thing is amazing. The grunt it's got low down and through the mid-range is absolutely ideal for the UK roads. For having fun, for using an engine and not being going stupid speeds, this thing's great. Yesterday was banging sunshine and about 28 degrees. It was a bit too warm. Today is a bit overcast, but there is sun, as I say, down my way, so I'm going to jump back on the motorway on this. And I'm going to cruise down there and then I'm going to pick things up down there. I'll show you a bit of the motorway so you can see this bike is very comfortable on the motorway. And of course, I mean, it's an 800, of course it's going to be comfortable doing it, but it is very smooth, it is very comfortable. I will note now the wind protection on this bike is better than I was expecting, giving such a tiny screen, but giving my height as well. Obviously I get full-on wind in the face, but it's not turbulent or anything like that. I'm not getting buffeting, and I can feel less wind pressure on, like my hips and that, so it's definitely helping a little bit, but see it more as like a, a naked feel. This has got Suzuki's auto balance system in it. Just kidding, that's me. Now, as I mentioned, they've changed the suspension on this compared to the 8S. I believe what they did was they changed the internals from a KYB setup to a Showa, I think it's called a something piston system, I can't remember, but the point is they're slightly uprated to give them a bit stiffer suspension, and I think it's got a little bit less travel on it as well, but it does feel very nice. Something I did notice yesterday is between first and second, the quick shifter can be a little clunky at slower speeds. It's absolutely fine if you're absolutely on it, and it's fine if you're in higher gears, and coming down the box feels nice, but just every now and then that first to second feels like a little bit of a jump, and it's sort of now, I am not the biggest fan of quick shifters. You may notice I might be using the clutch half the time. I'll try not to, but it is what it is. It works perfectly fine everywhere else, and it's very nice to use in conjunction with the Suzuki slipper clutch, where it's a grip slip assist clutch, so it makes the clutch a little bit easier to use, and it also means that your rear wheel won't lock up if you downshift a little bit too early. See, that one was a bit nah, but then maybe I shouldn't have changed gear there. Maybe I should just let the engine rev out more. So 70 miles an hour, and we're doing just under 5,000 RPM. As you can probably hear, it's quite windy for me, and I cannot get out of it because this screen is too low. 1, 2, 3, go! Okay, so let's get past this bus. That was just quarter throttle, bang up through the gears. It's got this lovely amount of grunt. That's more like it. Country roads and sunshine. I've just been sat on the motorway. As I say, it is a bit windy on this bike, but it's very smooth, very capable, very comfortable. So, yeah, it kind of is what it is to sit on a motorway. One thing you might not notice immediately, because it didn't stand out to me at first, is the fact that they've painted the wheels grey, and it actually looks great, because normally, they go for black or something, but grey is just this middle tone that just looks really nice. Big brakes on the front, suspension on the front is non-adjustable. You see there's no adjustments on it at all, but it has got that shower system inside it, and I believe they've done the same thing with the rear shock. It's a shower as well. You can just about see in there, which you can adjust the preload on. Looks wise, I think that headlight, which is okay on the S, fits in way better on the 8R because it's got more fairing around it, it's more hidden in there, and I think that headlight actually looks great. It's very angular. I do like the shape of this body panel, and I don't know why, but I'm getting old SV, but not the bikini one, shapes out of it. I like it. I like the blue. The engine, as you know, this is the same units and everything else, and it's a very, very good engine. These plastics, of course, are all very nice. The tank is metal, coming back on the subframe, which is like this little trellis, to the tail, which you'll notice is very short, and it would look great, I think, if you took the tail tidy off and shortened that up. But I've noticed something about this bike that I haven't noticed on many others, which is, that's not the tail light. The tail light and the indicators and everything are in this. So if you want to move this back here with a tail tidy, it isn't a case of just bolting on a bracket and putting your number plate on there. You're going to have to work out how the wiring all gets moved back as well. I'm sure there'll be solutions in the future. I think personally I would have much preferred it if they didn't go with a black tank and they sprayed it the same blue as the bike, because then I think that would have been more even. But I can kind of see what they're going for, but I would have rather that was blue. But I'm being picky here because there isn't really a huge amount to say. It's a very honest bike for what it is. Let's just give you a few specs and then we're going to get out there. So, price is just under 9 grand. It weighs 205 kilos roughly, putting out about 82 horsepower and about 78 newton meters of torque. Wow! I don't know if you saw that, but a police car was on the other side of the road, or an ambulance, to get round, and this car decided to overtake the one behind. That was a silly move, wasn't it? I don't know exactly what the MPG on this bike is, and I've heard that it might be a little bit more thirsty than they've suggested. I don't know for sure. So, I think that covers it. Is there anything I've forgotten? Ask me in the comments. Otherwise, let's get going. Here you go. This is what the Suzuki one button press does. You just go beep, and it starts the bike for you. Now obviously, because it's got a nice feeling suspension, it is going to be a little bit firm, but it's not jarringly firm. It's, you feel the bumps, but they don't break the spine. But it does mean it feels very planted in the corners. From what I've heard, some people have been doing a few track things with this bike and have actually set some records recently maybe unofficial, but on a UK track. Basically just saying that this bike on track could be a proper little weapon. Well, I say little, it's not little. I say that because it kind of feels that way. Feels smaller, but it's not. Now the sound is hidden a bit. That's one of the things. This engine can sound amazing with a decent exhaust on it. Obviously with the cat and everything fitted to this one, it's very toned down. And you get a nice rumble and it sounds nice and it's very neighbour friendly. But if you want, you know, a bit of snarling and crackling out of this parallel twin firing at 270 degrees, well then yeah, you might want to get more open exhaust. So I got to realise yesterday, you just have to slam the brakes on, stamp down the box, throw it in, and it will pull itself out from the lowest of revs. And it feels really good. And this bike has positioned itself perfectly, I think, because this bike has got, as I say, about 82 brake horsepower, which means you can restrict this to A2. It costs, I believe it's £85 to have it coded. They literally flash the ECU and then they can flash it back again. So this sits as a bike that, I mean, it's got loads of grunt, it's got loads of power, don't get me wrong. But it's not like an inline 4000 that just spools up like crazy and in first, second gear you're already losing your license sort of speeds. You can actually use this engine, it's a lot of fun. You know, someone getting into their A2 could get this restricted down, and then a couple of years later they can go on and get that upgraded to the full A, and then what you unlock in this bike is a perfectly usable bike that you really don't need any more than this. Now some people will say, well, 80 brake horsepower isn't enough for me, I want a bit more than that, and yeah, okay, some people are like that. You know, you can go and get something with 210 brake horsepower, but I've ridden a lot of bikes and I can tell you, bikes with that much horsepower are not a huge amount of fun on the road if you're going to do things legally or try and keep your license. So this could be like a one-stop shop for people getting into biking and want to get a sports bike that's capable and powerful enough. You know, I wouldn't advise a new rider ride this, but if you're sensible, if your brain's switched on and you remember that a bike only goes as fast as you twist your wrist, this is a perfect place. And I honestly think that, okay, younger people say do sometimes go off and go, well, I want 1,000, I want this, I want that. You'll come back here one day. You'll realise this is it. This is what you wanted. And for years I said about how an 800cc with tons of torque didn't need to be super fast. Light, agile bike is the way to go. And all these years later, the companies are all making the bike I was talking about in so many different varieties. Obviously, you've got, you know, this is the sports version, you've got the S, which is the naked version, you've got the DE, which is the DE Dirt Edition, the off-road version, and then you have the RE, which is the road version. I have reviews on the S, the DE, and the RE, and now this. If I was to pick one of these bikes out for myself, yeah, I'm probably going to go for an RE, but then I'm a supermoto, a bit of off-road guy. I like that sort of style bike. Also, I'm 6'4", and as I say, this bike, it doesn't feel small to me in any way, but I can tell that I'm not quite the right shape for it. One of the things that makes it feel like it's a much smaller bike is how narrow it is in the middle. Like, your legs get really gripped around the tank because it's a proper V shape, and the seat at the front's only a few inches across, and that's not something you normally expect to feel on something like this. But it actually is very nice. And also there is another benefit to that, which is if you're a bit of a shorter rider, having it narrower in the middle means you can get your legs straight, which means you're more likely going to be able to flat foot this thing. So yeah, it's perfect for that. I believe the seat height is 810 millimeters. I hope I remembered that right. I'm sure I'll be corrected 1,000 times in the comments if I'm not. I'm sure it was 810. And so you can just grab the brakes, dump down a gear because you've got that quick shifter, and then all that torque to rip you back out. It's good. It's good. But as I say, it's at this sweet spot where 80 brake horsepower to 100, I think, is probably where it's at. But it also depends on the gearing. let's face it, unless you're going on track a lot, you really can't use all that power if you have a lot more than that. So you get to have a lot more fun with this. Now, as I say, I was riding this bike yesterday, and I've had time to think about all the pros and cons and things about it, and I can only really find one thing about this bike that I'm not the biggest fan of. And it's completely understandable and normal. It's the same on all Suzukis in recent years. The levers are perfectly serviceable. They are, you know, perfectly good. They will last the life of the bike and you can use them fine. But the levers and the foot pegs aren't quite as nice as you maybe would want. And I know that you're probably going to want to replace them. But that's, I think, is part of the point. I think Suzuki know you're going to want to replace them. And rather than pick that option for you and charge a lot of money for it, they're putting on a placeholder, as it were. And there's nothing wrong with them. There's adjustment in the front brake. There is no adjustment in the clutch, and the clutch is a bit of a flopper. But then you don't use it all that much on a quick shifter bike. As I say, I think that's why Suzuki put adequate, but not necessarily the most amazing levers on it. There you go, I'll show you. The pegs are absolutely fine. It's just they're very, very basic, and I know most people are going to want something a little bit more specialised, and as I say, these levers are fine, but not necessarily the very best. One other thing quickly while I'm here, as I'll show you, under the seat, there is about enough space for half a ham sandwich. Now, I used to say the same thing about exhaust, like, you know, Suzuki know you're going to change your exhaust, so it's not really that big of a deal. On this, it's got an underslung exhaust. It comes out the front of the bike, underneath the bike, and then the cat is about 2 inches from the rear wheel. Now, that might actually be, I think it's the cat, it might be the box actually, the silencer box. Either way, that's going to warm your rear tyre, and that's no bad thing. Having a bike that warms its own rear tyre, that's like MotoGP technology. Right, now we're in the national speed limit. Okay, so 40 to 60, this is that grunt I was talking about. You ready for this? It's amazing! Just a straight roll on from 40. And that's not even all the throttle, that's just a decent twist. 80 brake horsepower, forget the horsepower. The torque is where it's at. I don't know if there's a huge amount more to really say about this bike. I love it, it's fantastic. Of course, sit on one, test ride one, try it out against the competition, see what you think, but I really, really like this bike. Now, as I say, for me, at my height and that, if I was going to choose out of the 8s, I'd be getting the 800 RE. But if I wanted something as an all-rounder bike, as something for a bit of a weekend fun bike, track machine, commuting, because you can commute on this perfectly happily, any of these things, this bike just will do it. Right, I'm going to get this thing back to the dealership because it is a highly requested bike. In fact, from my understanding, of the 5 last test rides of this bike equaled 5 sales. Now that may just be that people were predisposed and were like, well, I might as well try it before I buy it, but I know I'm going to buy it. Or maybe it convinced them, and I can see how this could. You're actually going to turn down here? Now, it is a bit of a windy affair on the motorway, to be fair, but as I said, it's got this tiny little screen. It never really had a chance, especially with me on it. But I can't say that it's made it any worse, because sometimes if you have a screen that's just a bit too low, it ends up buffeting wind into your head, or into your eyes, or your neck, or something, and it can make your head wobble and stuff. None of that. Nice, smooth airflow, so that's a good aspect of that. So there you go, what a great machine. I had a lot of fun on that. Huge thanks to Hazelmere Motorcycles. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here. If you'd like to help support this channel, please consider doing that through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. And obviously, again, a massive thank you to BikeSure for sponsoring this video. Until the next one, bye-bye.